General Manager for Corporate Services. It was well done.
Do you want us to, you wanted us
You didn't clap. Yeah, you wanted
Oh,
to.
you wanted a standing ovation? This, that was a seated O.
yeah.
That was a seated stand.
No. When you go to a campfire,
thought you
standing
were hot.
ovation.
I thought you were top.
I am sorry.
Not that one.
We'll train him that.
Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So today we're here to talk about the snow removal policy. And this really started back when Council passed a resolution that says that staff bring forward the snow removal policy for review with Council on the breadth of the ability of staff to react to heavy snowfall by staff. And this really came up as we had heavy snowfall after snowfall. And with the staff levels that we have and the priority system that we've been working on the last while, it was very hard to get back into residential. So, a little background. I'll let Jeremy do some of this as well. But, we have 350 lane kilometers of road. There's 77 kilometers of trails and sidewalk that we maintain, not that we have. We have a public snow dump and a city-owned snow dump as well. It's not on here. We do winter sand management, salt management. We have 25 FTEs, full-time equivalent staff that are assigned to this. For the most part, that is 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have 30 pieces of equipment. We crushed last year 5,500 tons of sand, and we used 400 tons of salt, and then of course this contract equipment. But I should have actually had one more slide here about the 25 FTEs, right? There's 6 to 7 FTEs that are assigned to grounds that do the trails and sidewalks and work with contractors and do parking lots. There's 14 equipment operators on roads, and with a couple of supervisors, and then a couple of people that we can get from the water sewer department and or possibly mechanics at times to kind of round it up to that 25. So if we look at the 14 equipment operators that we have, and the way the shifts run to ensure that we have some coverage 7 days a week so that we can have a sander out, could get started on snow removal. We have a Sunday to Thursday shift and a Tuesday to Saturday shift, starting at 6 and going to 3 a.m., 6 in the morning to 3 p.m. And then the second afternoon shift that goes from 3 till 11:30 at night. Now we have the ability to extend those shifts to get us more 24 hours coverage and some overtime to get more staff on the ground. But if you think about those 4 different shifts and only 14 people, that's basically 3 people at any one time that are out on the streets. It's one plow truck, or a sand truck, I should say, a grader, and whether it's a snow blower or another grader or a loader possibly. That's our kind of our typical staff, except where they overlap on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays when we bring it in. So that's our current staff levels. Let you go from here.
So here's some photographs of some areas in our community and the winter conditions. And followed up with some of our snow fighting equipment that we have being operated by our dedicated team of snow fighters. Some early days of snow fighting in the area, courtesy of the museum. I'd like to acknowledge their input on that, so thank them.
Snow blower looks almost like what we have now.
It's probably roughly the same vintage. Don't have any historical records on those other than they were from the area. So So a bit of history about plow trucks. So prior to 2010, we used plow trucks primarily in the community, and we just plowed from curb to curb. And we were able to clear the streets rather quickly. Unfortunately, our residents were frustrated with the rather large windrows that appeared in the front of their driveways.
That's actually a small one.
We were able to clear the streets within 1 to 2 days.
I know, but that's a small one. I remember trying to get across those things with groceries.
So we introduced graders with gates. These gates were actually fabricated by some of our mechanics at the time. Mark Gehring was instrumental in bringing those on stream. And they worked very well to hold the snow while the grader passed in front of a driveway. We have 3 of these gates on 3 of our 4 graders. So the downtown haul off, as indicated in the pictures before, we've blown snow and hauled it for many, many years. We haul from the downtown core because there's no place to store snow. We windrow it to the center of the road, typically during the evenings, and then we haul it during the day. Sometimes the staff refer to this as the traveling road show. When we have the blower and all the trucks, costs the city about $2,500 an hour, and we can run $50,000 for just a haul off. We truck the snow to the city-operated snow dump, and we've hauled for many years. We haul from congested areas as well. 104A Avenue, east of 112th Street is an area we haul from, and as well as some areas in Matthews Park that are typically prone to flooding.
It's definitely the most expensive way to handle snow.
So we also operate the public snow dump. We've operated this for many years. During the winter, the snow has to be pushed. This photograph is from 2007, where the snow dump was basically full. There's no cost for users of this facility, and it depends on how much snow we get every year as to how much it costs to operate it. Just wanted to note there's very few municipalities that operate and maintain a snow dump at no charge. So we're going to jump to 2010, and the city struck a snow removal committee. We comprised of staff and citizens, and they looked at a number of the benchmark communities around, and they reviewed the processes that we were currently using. And at the time, we were still using plow trucks and filling driveways. And the snow removal committee made some recommendations that we stop filling driveways, that we employ the use of a courtesy blade. I'll talk about that in a minute. That we use graders and snow blowers to move the snow, and that we collect fees for the use of the snow dump. The courtesy blade was a bit of technology that we tried, and it wasn't quite as effective as we had hoped it was, so we just stuck to graders with gates. So graders with gates is where we're at. Graders push the snow to the side of the road, and then they drop the gate, and you've probably witnessed it yourself. They drop the gate in front of the driveway, hold the snow, and then deposit it at the end of the driveway. And then the blower comes along and blows the snow onto the adjacent boulevard. So here you see a bit of the crews working in tandem to clear the roadways. The snow blowers are very effective at placing the snow, and they compact the snow. Last year we witnessed with some loaders piling snow really high. The blowers typically compact that snow to about half again. So this process of using graders and snow blowers works really well. It leaves the street clean from curb to curb, and the snow is placed neatly on the boulevard. It is, however, very slow. It can take the crews up to 5 weeks to clear the entire city from curb to curb. And this in turn frustrates many residents due to the time it takes. These 5250 snow blowers that were inexpensive to purchase, however, have reached end of life. little bit of history on the snowfall year. And this slide talks a little bit about how much snow we got in 17, 18 as compared to the years. Be interesting to note this slide also is a snowfall season, so it's from July to July. So it's not actually a January to December. So we can kind of remember winter seasons, not necessarily calendar years when it comes to snowfall. So now we get down to the budget numbers and the budget crunch. You can see in 2017 we spent more than we budgeted for, as we did in 2018.
So going to stay here a bit, notice, of course, with lower snowfalls that we had in the previous years, we were nowhere close to the budget. We did not have to do much contracting in at all. Most of the contracting was just for trucks for the haul off. With the change that we did almost a year ago to get the contract loaders in and the extra haul offs that we had to do, that is why we ended up being over budget in 2017 by a bit. The council has incorporated the heavy snowfall reserve, which is a very important thing, so we don't have to constantly budget for a high number. This year, this last year, 2018, which again is the budget year, is January to December, so we're into a new budget. Not a new winter season, but a new budget. We were about $450,000 over the budgeted amount, so we're almost utilized all of the heavy snowfall reserve, which will have to be topped up again. And we certainly have to be very prudent in our budget or contracting uses over the next year, the 2019 year, to ensure that we stay within at least that amount. So although we're over budget, we did not go over the heavy snowfall reserve, unless there's a few more bills coming in that I don't know about yet. Just wanted to point that out, and the main thing is the amount of extra contract work that has happened with the way we've modified the procedure. The procedure change with the loaders to make sure that we got all the way through the residential in a reasonable amount of time, taking us from 4 to 5 weeks to do the city down to somewhere in the 2 to 3 week time frame, has certainly increased our costs. I think it's in a later slide, but the use of a contract, loader is about $2,000 a day. If we have 4 or 5 loaders working, for easy math, that's $10,000 a day, about $50,000 a week, $200,000 in a month roughly. If you do it January, February, March, and then again in December, that's, $800,000 worth of contract service. So we have to not contract the whole time, or we will definitely go way over budget. Staffing level increases, we talked about that earlier, that help mitigate some of that, but we're not talking that. We are definitely talking about policy at this point, so.
So again, a policy decision of council is do we have enough in the snowfall reserve? Because as you can look at the numbers, going back to the last slide, we budget for what is on average typical, and then that reserve is there. So there's often public comment about we run out of budgets. Council doesn't put enough money in the budget for snowfall. You do. You put it in as in your operating budget, and then you also put in your reserve, and then you draw down that reserve. We've never overshot the two combined together, and in a lot of years we don't spend what's in the operating budget. The question will be, as a community grows, and you go back to the operating slide, about 9,072 more units in the community, that also means more roads, more streets. The question is that reserve enough? And that reserve really depends on weather conditions and how we manage our snowfall, but it also needs to recognize growth in the community as well. You'll also notice from the information the gentlemen are providing, we have more equipment than we have operators. So it's not always and that's partly because of the different snowfalls and the different methods. So we have a variety of different options available to us, and operators trained to operate the different pieces of equipment. But it definitely is, we've got more equipment sometimes sitting in the shop and I know there's been people that have driven by and taken pictures of the equipment sitting in the shop. It's not because we don't want to use them, we just have limited resources. You can't put in a contract operator on our equipment. We do try to also staff up during the winter months with seasonal workers, which equate to FTEs at the end of the day. So it's trying to always find that balance. If you have too many staff, if it's not snowing, you're challenged with what you're going to do with staff. But when it snows, you never have enough. So it's always a balancing act for Jeremy and his team down at Public Works, trying to find out how many employees we need, what's the right level of equipment, as well as what's the right level of contract services. Because if you don't need contract service, you have no obligations to them, and you don't have to, there's no bills to pay in that regard.
Yeah, just a little further on that. In the past, we've had seasonal equipment operators that we've tried to hire. The economy is a little bit different now. We probably have a little more success getting hiring seasonal equipment operators, but there were many seasons previous that we had extra people on the budget, but we couldn't actually fill the spot because, or if we did, they were quickly off to the oil patch, or the gas. So.
And in all fairness, we're hoping that shifts that way again.
Correct. So hiring 6-month or 4-month people for equipment operators is not the easiest task.
No, it's not.
Just for quick comparison, Jeremy found this graph. So what was the magazine? Or the information?
I just asked the Google about this, and this is what I got. So it's a municipal benchmarking report that comes out every year, and I just thought I'd throw it out there to see where we are on the global scale. And the exciting part is that we land about average. So our cost per lane kilometer were about 4,600. The MBN report indicates the average is about 4,300. And the MBN report incidentally does not cover sidewalks, and we do our sidewalks for the 4617. So there's a lot of discussion in the report, and we can take that offline if somebody has a lot of questions on it. So we get to the draft snow and ice policy. Some of the principles that we have indicated in the policy is Fort St. John is a winter city, and we're also in partnership with the residents. Public safety is our priority, and Fort St. John is financially responsible and sustainable. Feel free to jump in if you.
So the proposed, the draft policy that we have presented here is the policy and procedure that we've been, well, not the procedure, but the policy basically that we've been working with for the last year. So what you've seen out there is what this is working towards. It really, because actually the council policy that is actually on the books didn't change in 2010. So it still talks about having the roads clear in a day. Yeah. The procedure changed dramatically, but not the policy. And in the same case here, we've changed it. We have a big procedure that goes behind this, but this is the policy that we have to now work towards. This policy gives guiding principles. It talks about priorities, and there's a number of, there's a priority listing of the streets with the major thoroughfares and collectors, then the transit routes, followed by residential and downtown lanes. So that's for that. The other priorities are sidewalks, trails, and parking lots, and so that's also addressed in here, and they're maintained by the Grounds and Facilities Department. So the other thing that we've done with this is we made sure that we talk about the priorities, and that's to ensure safe movement and quick movement of emergency vehicles and residents once you get onto a collector, that those roads are quickly cleared. And so we talk about priorities, and then we talk about level of service. And so there's multiple levels if we get more and more snow. So that's saying if we have just a kind of an average event, we can carry on with our, thank you, our own staff. If we go to the next level, then as there's more snow that happens, we have to respond quicker, with more resources, whether it's contract or change our methodology to just quickly open up a street. And by making a couple passes down the street, it does not go curb to curb, but we are able to quickly make the road drivable. So those are levels of service, of course, with the priorities set first. So that is why we introduced levels. It speaks more to our level of required response.
So just a few highlights. As Victor said, we initiated a review in 2017, and this is a follow-up to that. The purpose of the policy is to establish these corridors and the response levels and the priority levels. So the response levels indicated in the policy dictate what resources we allocate and in what areas. And that's administered through the admin procedure. We've also given consideration to the history of snow clearing and the snowfall in the area and what's worked well from our feedback from different members of the community, although sometimes that can prove to be difficult. At the end of the day, we want to provide an equitable level of service to the community around street, sidewalks, parking lot, and trails. Providing an equitable level of service at the same time allowing flexibility for staff to deal with unpredictability of the northern BC winters and the winter festivals that we have. We want to be able to prepare for high on ice and clear certain areas around that for the Santa Claus parade as well. So the traffic and sidewalk bylaws supplement this draft policy as well. So priorities for roadways, we have P1A, P1B, P2A, and P2B. We have these three snow clearing levels based on the accumulation over a 72-hour period. The policy leaves the sequence and methodologies up to each individual department to do the best they can. And an important part nowadays is communication, and that will be based off the guiding principles of the communication policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you talked about procedure policies. So that's your operational things. So when I was looking at the bylaw, the draft proposed bylaw, so the snow clearing levels 1, 2, and 3 will determine what action you're going to take with the priorities, right? So you've got, how many priorities do we have here? P1,
I think there were 5.
P1A, P1B,
It's really
5 of them?
Five.
Yeah.
5 of them and 3 different levels.
Six.
There we go, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4, 5, 6. So if we had a year where there's significant snowfall every 3 days, we could see residential streets being cleared right down the middle, and we're not gonna get there to do the curb to curb for a week, a month.
So one of the things that we've been doing with the contract services is they've been working, it allows our staff to go back to the beginning of the priorities and work through the priorities.
Yep.
The contractors we've been keeping in the residential, so they work through the residential areas, and if they start in one corner, they work around the city and do it all. And then if there's a bit of a break, then they start in another quadrant later. So that's been the benefit of that. Down the road, as we continue on with this, just my little plug for the staffing stuff next year is
We want to bump someone out of the top 3, huh?
we will be probably working on a residential crew to do the same sort of thing to keep because that will be less expensive than contracting the way it is. We do have enough equipment to be able to do that. But the real idea of this with the contractors is being able to keep them in residential. And hopefully within 2 weeks, you should have your roads cleared. And if it keeps snowing and snowing and snowing, unless you want something like going faster than that, we'd be back to plow trucks.
And if the economy picks up significantly, we're not going to have access to those contractors.
That's quite a possibility.
New Year's Day, I got 2 complaints. One that we were clearing roads and they wanted to sleep in. The other one was that we weren't doing anything. So it doesn't matter what we do, we're going to be damned. So I think that for me, as I was trying to read this policy, it would be really helpful if I understood the operational part of it, although that we're not going to operate it. I get that. We're going into the weeds. I just need to understand how the policy would work, right? On the different scenarios, because that's when we're going to get tagged in this stuff.
Right.
So that would be my only ask. And you talked about how, was it the traffic, oops, went right past it. The traffic and sidewalk bylaws will supplement this draft policy. Are we talking about saying no more parking in this area while we're doing the roads? Are we gonna?
Currently, excuse me, currently, we have the ability to tow in the traffic bylaw. So we won't be,
We were told that we didn't.
we do.
We can? We're not?
Yeah, in certain areas, and bylaw could probably speak more to this, but obviously if you're parked in a no parking zone, you can tow. If we sign the area, no parking, we can tow.
The biggest thing with towing though is we do a lot of blocks in a day. And to be ahead of this, there's a 24-hour notification period. There's a lot of other challenges with this. We would really only be looking at the ones that are obviously covered with a lot of snow and been there for a long time. We try operationally to go into residential during the day when most of the vehicles are gone because people are at work. And then we go into commercial or through fairs more so in the evening when the downtown is clear, when the commercial areas are clear. So part of the reason why we do a morning and an afternoon is to be able to move between the zones. So although there is some issue with it, with vehicles, to be able to post these areas with the number of blocks that we can get done in a day would require more people, I'm just saying.
Moving up the ladder.
And really, if we're effective at watching the blocks and making sure that if there's an open block that and the guys they're really quite good at that, going in there when there's nobody there. But
Okay.
of course, there is challenges if someone's there for a while.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy thing to do, to post everything or to deal with towing.
So when it says the traffic and sidewalk bylaws will supplement this draft policy, are we looking at making changes to the traffic and sidewalk bylaw for this when it?
The traffic bylaw is currently under review in 2019, and certainly the snow clearing policy will be taken into consideration with the traffic control bylaw.
Okay,
And the
perfect.
sidewalk one really speaks to the fact that people are supposed to clear their own sidewalks.
Perfect. So needless to say, 2/3 are lined up for questions. So Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to bounce some questions that have been thrown at me to you guys. Number one, just the heavy equipment. And Jeremy, you mentioned that the gates are used on graders, but they didn't work on another piece of equipment in past years. Did I hear that?
Courtesy blade.
Courtesy blade, sorry.
Yeah, we had a courtesy blade that was basically permanently mounted to a loader, and it had a wing that dropped down and would scrape the driveway. And although it worked somewhat, it proved to be difficult if there was a car parked in the driveway. You couldn't drop the wing down because you might hit the parked car. And there was quite a bit of spillage over that. And the graders, when they gate, there's some spillage if there's a lot of snow, but they're able to gate right onto the street and not get into the driveway. The other issue with the wing was if there was a driveway that was sloped up very high, the edge of the wing would gouge the driveway as it went by.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was just a question, basically on the size of the equipment that was being used. So thank you for that. The other one is in regards to safety with the large windrows downtown and just the philosophy of putting in the center as opposed to taking up one lane. No, just in the safety aspects were thrown at me in two different directions. One was pedestrians trying to cross, and the meridian in the middle being a blockage for them, for the drivers, and then also for the people not realizing that they shouldn't be driving in two lanes. And so just if you can tell me what the policy is or why it's in the center, and then I can answer that question.
That's been a question for many, many years. Why do we put it in the center of the road? And we've put it in the parking lanes, and it's safely out of the way, and the business community doesn't have parking. So although the street is safe, the business community doesn't facilitate their parking needs. So we've talked about putting the windrow in one single lane, so have two lanes on one side and one lane on the other. One of the issues around that is making it difficult for people making a left-hand turn into a lane that doesn't exist or that it's full of snow. So then you would have to merge into traffic. Emergency services, now that there's a center lane, sometimes they have to cross to the center lane to bypass traffic. They're unable to do that. The windrow in the middle of the road also causes frustration for business owners that now traffic's not able to cut across where they normally would or gain alley access. So these are all things that we look at the end of the day. The center of the road seems to be where we get the least number of complaints, and it facilitates the removal of the windrow the quickest and easiest.
Thank you. One last comment. Grand Prairie, several other cities, they don't do cleaning of residential roads. Has that been evaluated here by us?
I think if you look at the Facebook, a number of the citizens are quite convinced we don't do that as well.
See, exactly.
Well, I'm just wondering what the cost-saving dollars are and the manpower usage. Victor, you've brought up that you need more staff. What would be the cost savings if we had to look at not doing certain areas of the community?
Well, I think if we look at last year, we could get a rough idea on what we spent on contract loaders. If we took that out of the equation, that might give us a rough idea. But we haven't sat down and calculated what it would cost to not clear residential streets.
I think it would be very informative for the community and for the exact person or reason that you just stated. People are up in arms, Facebook is ugly, all of that stuff. What's the hard costs? And other communities have made those decisions. It's been done. It's not reinventing the wheel. We're not the big ugly people trying to do this. What's the cost savings?
Saskatoon actually made the decision and then rescinded it. Because of no, I get, and I agree with you, the number would be good to know. And then I think what we need to do is show how much we would have saved based on the centimeters of snow that we had for that particular winter. But
I think the, finding the most efficient way of snow removal, and, you know, based on cost is always a difficult one. The most efficient and cost-effective way is not to remove snow at all and let the sun do the work. So that's not the most effective way. So it's balancing efficiency and effectiveness and the needs in the community.
Safety.
And safety, right?
yeah, good. Is that it?
That is it. Yeah,
Thank you. Councillor Boland.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, gentlemen. I mean, I pity the guys doing snow removal when it comes to Facebook, as you said, because according to the general public, none of us have any clue what we're doing. And I mean, you said it as well. We don't even do residential streets. So I think the fact that we continue to look at this and continue to make improvements is huge. I've lived here my whole life. I can remember when we were kids, it was greater, then it was plow truck, then it was greater, and there's a different complaint for each. I think the operational process that's done now is the best. It's the cleanest, it's the most efficient, it's not the fastest, but we don't have the amount of complaints we used to get when we did those windrows was unreal. So I think at the end of the day, we all know the answer is going to be more staff and more equipment and more operations, which you've already prepped Mr. Joy for coming next year. So I think the fact that we're looking at this right now is great. I think it preps us for going into the future years. And you know, if we can get that 5 weeks down to 3 weeks for an entire cleanup, I think we're gaining ground, and I think we just continue to look at it every year, and I think it is what it is. So thank you so much.
Okay. Councillor Clausen.
Thanks, Your Worship. Obviously, it's a cost thing, and I mean, we could, if taxpayers, if it's that important, we'll just pay twice as much tax and probably could do it quicker. I was thinking, and it's operational, so it's none of my business, but I'll throw it out anyway. One of the challenges in residential especially is just drivability of streets. And rather than trying to remove snow off of the streets, is it possible that we could have contractors with graders just coming through with the blades down? Because I see a truck go down our street every once in a while. He doesn't have his blade down, and he's sanding the corners, which is awesome. But could they even be going through the residentials just leveling the snow that's there, and then as we drive on it, we don't get those ruts with the big high things and we're being tossed around like this? Because that's one of the challenges for drivers, I know.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've noticed it most recently with the +8 temperatures that we saw. It kind of brought that to the forefront. So occasionally the operators do drop the blade. One of the challenges that they have is if they have a straight blade, just for example, and they clear hard packed snow, it makes it glare ice. So if they have a cutting edge blade, they can cut that and it leaves grooves in it, and they can lay sand down right behind it. So continually improving, you know, that's what we're aiming for. Be better.
Just to expand on that a bit, if there is a really rutted road and the sand trucks are there, they do have blades on them, as Jeremy had said. They at times will cut the tops off that, kind of make it a little smoother, waiting for the full cleanup to come.
Right.
Doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Grimsrud.
Thanks, Your Worship. First off, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it. Very informative. Appreciate having a little bit more insight into the snow clearing in the city. Coming from somebody who just got stuck on my parents' residential street in Prince George for about an hour trying to get out of town to come home. I would be curious to see the number for not clearing residential streets, but I don't think that's really an avenue we want to go down. Now, that being said, I do think that putting that number out to the public and saying this is what the cost is of clearing the residential streets, this would be our cost savings if we didn't do it, and having that information put out to the public in a way that maybe there's a bit of understanding how much the current services are costing and a bit of a comparison with some other communities that may not have that level of service. Just kind of an aside there. The rate of contract equipment, how do we come up with that rate? Is it put out to bid or?
We pay provincial Blue Book plus 10%,
Okay.
which is usually quite a bit under what the normal rate is in town. So that makes it a little harder to find contract people, but that's what we pay.
Interesting. I just had a conversation with somebody that figured that was significantly higher than any of the oil and gas companies were paying at the moment. So
We can't afford that.
interesting. Okay, good to know. Bus stop clearing. So that is a lower priority in the list of priorities from the sidewalk clearing in certain areas. Are the bus stops cleared as the units go by them, or are they kind of, sorry, I know that's kind of operations, but
Bus stop
policy-wise,
or bus route?
Bus stops.
bus
bus
stops,
stops.
like clearing out if somebody's taking their stroller to the bus stop, getting from the bus or from the sidewalk to the bus stop.
So the Public Works crews have done some of that too. It is under the grounds priority list. So I'd have to speak more to them. I know that has certainly come up in priority over the last year. I won't even say a couple of years, because there was many years that they were done very infrequently. Not all bus stops are on a sidewalk. There's many that are on the other side of the road just because of the way the bus has to travel.
Right,
And so it's not always convenient to jump across and get that, or they miss it. So
so then that takes place after the rest of the sidewalks, basically.
yes and no. Some are done as you go past them.
Okay.
Not all of them. But to make a special effort, special trip back, that is down the list.
Okay, sounds good. One other question. The committee that was formed in 2010 suggested charging for the snow dump. What happened with that potential decision, and why are we not currently charging for the snow dump?
So, it was kind of before I was actively involved in that, and quite a while ago. So I did a little bit of investigating, and although it was a recommendation, the implementation of it was going to be gigantic, because it was discovered that the users of that facility are not only city residents, but district residents as well. So then we had to look at a system where we could allow 24-hour access. Do we allow 24-hour access? Then what do we charge, and how do we come up with this? We would have to adjust the fees and charges bylaw, because we don't have anything currently in that. And at that time, the season was over, and operations just decided to continue operating it as per usual.
So if I could speak to that issue, because I know that came up after, in the 2010 committee recommendation. The conversation around the time was, do we want to facilitate people removing snow from their business parking lots, from their lawns or their driveways? To get some of the snow into a snow dump is better for the community overall. if we charge for it, in addition to the administrative challenges, those could have been overcome, as well as probably what we charge would pay for additional staffing to man it. It just was the idea that, are we going to discourage people from removing snow? We see a lot of parking lots, privately owned parking lots in our community with huge piles of snow that become a problem, especially around the spring or a thaw period, where that creates Great Lakes. And then it becomes a problem with our storm drainage, and it creates other problems on the system. So at the end of the day, in the balance of it, when we decided that we were already providing a service, so it would be actually a change where you're taking something away from the community was using it appropriately, removing their snow from their parking lots. We just felt we would frustrate the community. We just add another layer of bureaucracy, and at the end of the day, the bit of money that we got for the snow dump really wouldn't offset what we'd lose on other operational concerns and the safety of the public, particularly in parking lots. So it is something that we looked at. We are one of the only few communities that I'm aware of that provide a public snow dump. But on the other end, it aligns with your policy being a winter city and providing a safe community. And it's something that we've done for a large number of years. Okay. So it's something we could look at again if directed by council, but we do find that people have respected it and used it appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Good. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think just about everything has been summed up, but I just want to say great job. I don't think everyone in our community realizes what we have, as Councillor Stewart had brought up, in other communities where residential isn't included. It's just an assumption in Fort St. John. I want my streets done, I want my sidewalks done, and I wanted it like yesterday, or before I have to go off to work. I'm one of them, it's true. If there's ice, I am going to send you a note. It is a concern, but I think that staff has really stepped it up. I'm one of those from way back when, being really pregnant and trying to get into my driveway. You put pregnancy, like hormones, and a big snowdrift in front of my driveway.
6 bags of groceries.
Yeah, just saying, So I think we've also, along with the negativity, just know people that have lived here for quite a few years, we have seen a drastic improvement of what we had when we just had the blade and the truck go by. So thanks for that. Thanks for looking for different ideas. Not to mess with the chart, I can see how having an employee versus a contractor, would, help maybe alleviate our costs when we looked at the end of the day, what things would cost. It is something that our citizens do seem to prioritize on it. And again, through Her Worship, Ryan, I'm so sorry, but you're so valuable. If you could put the word out there. Do you know other communities don't, kudos to Fort St. John. Fort St. John, we're a step ahead of some of our neighbors. We're raising the bar, and hopefully the other communities will look to us as an example of a winter city. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to staff.
Thanks.
We've talked about the complaints that we received through social media and from the public, but I also must say we also get a lot of thank yous from the community as well. There's a large number of people on any one of those posts that often appreciate the level of service that council provides for snow clearing, and I think it is appreciated by people. It is frustrating for anyone that's dealing with their own specific situation, driveway, street, but I think for the most part, people understand, are pretty tolerant, and do support us. Your philosophy about we're in this together, help your neighbor, some of the things we've done around commending people in our community for shoveling their driveway and other people's driveway and their sidewalks. I mean, it's all part of that conversation as well. And I've noticed a significant change in the community just as in showing their appreciation as well. So we don't get discouraged. When we do get the complaints as part of it, it's expected and it is understandable. But we'll continue to listen, but we'll continue to sort of be efficient and effective with how we manage snow clearing as well.
Excellent. Good. it doesn't matter what we do. Some people are not going to like it. The people who make themselves aware of what we're doing, because we do put the information out, they get it. We all are in this together. That's why one of our first principles around this is that we are a winter city and we're in partnership with our residents on this. So I think if we were going to price out anything